Welcome back to Realistic Progression 1 in Kerbal Space Program 1.3.1, and we have to get a geostationary satellite up and running. And if you remember last episode, hopefully you did, there was a bit of a problem there. We need a huge amount of delta V to change inclination, and again, similar problems getting the stuff into the final orbit after the inclination change. So we're going to go for something efficient to do that this time. What we're going to do is go into a parking orbit. Then we're going to align our orbit carefully, and then we'll do an inclination change when we circularize. And that's probably about the efficient as I can fly it. We'll see how that goes. But even so, we need more delta V, or I certainly want more delta V available in the final stage, because up here, I think the thing I forgot was we need some of these. This is a service module tank. It has 17 units of ComSat payload. And 4 times that is 68, which is exactly what we need for this mission. So that's pretty much a requirement. And also the requirement of me checking to make sure everything's in the right stage. It does look like it is. Okay. The rest of the rocket looks similar until we get down to this stage. This stage is now quite large. The other way to get more delta V, and it looks like I've got less delta V here, but if I just right click this and just bring it here, I've got the tanks empty. They're going to be fueled on the pad. But if we fuel them up here, you'll see we've got 14,500 delta V. Account for 9 something for orbit, and we'll probably have around 4,000 something to, first of all, get out there to the target orbit, and then to circularize and inclination change at the same time. So we will just store it without the fuel, and we'll refuel it on the pad. But you'll notice that, in fact, let's just bring up the fuel again. You'll notice in the delta V stats, it's going to have 1.3 and 1.4. Given that we've upgraded this stage, our previous rocket would not have done that. 4.1 meters wide now and 20 meters tall. So have a look here, you'll see we're literally at the high limit, 40 meters. We can't go any taller. Interestingly, we can go wider, so we can do a 3-stage rocket. So that's not going to be a problem with the mass, at least the mass empty, that is. When it's full, it's too much. So if we bring that down, we're okay, 2/3 of the mass. And if we move further down, in order to get that extra delta V, we're going to have to do a few things. One is these. We're going to deploy 8 of these on the sides. We can probably get away with a little less now. We can, because I've got over 14,000, so that could be quite comfortable. This just lets me have more delta V available in the top stage. It does make the whole thing quite, well, more expensive. It's 43,000 to launch, and it's something like 100,000 to roll it out. So we only get 150k for completing the mission. So yeah, that's not a great reward. However, what we also have is 4 of these H1 engines underneath. Previously, we only had 3. And this then takes us, if we had 3, we'd be down at like 1.0 something. We'd hardly move when these first, are they casters? Yeah, casters burn out. And these are set to 51% thrust limit. So that lets us take off fairly reasonably. If I just bring up the fuel again, you'll see currently they will only be 1.2. If I bring that up, yeah, we're going to get 1.3, and then once the casters drop off, it'll be up to 1.4, and that's actually pretty powerful. Importantly, that will mean we don't have to spend too long in this next stage up. Now, this stage, remember, it was previously weak. Well, with this one going that fast to start off with, it's going to force this next stage to be actually okay. So we're not going to have too many problems with that. Well, as long as an engine doesn't fail. So let's get it saved. Let's get it built. And I'll see you on the launch pad. And here we are on the launch pad. We have our autopilot ready, so let's engage that. Our ascent path editor, I've set this to 100 start, 135 turn end, and final flight path angle of 5 degrees. Remember, that was up towards 20 degrees because of that stage right here that was having problems. Well, now that shouldn't be much of an issue. So let's actually see if we can take off and see where we're going. Now, one thing with this rocket at the moment, I don't have quite enough avionics for this. There's not enough. It's going to say something like, not enough avionics for control, but that will soon get out of the way because of the amount of fuel we'll be using. and we won't be moving much off vertical until it happens. For the next flight, I'll correct it. It's just a matter of a slider and a bit more money. There isn't anything excessive there, and MechJeb's going to ignore it anyway, so that's just a few thousand of extra control that we need to add to that. So, shall we start main engines? I think we shall. Main engine light, and 8 boosters, 4 main engines. This thing is taking off, well, not terribly in a hurry, but in more of a hurry than perhaps you might expect otherwise. And it's incredibly loud, but pretty impressive nonetheless. Okay, so we have a usual launch at this point. My computer's struggling a bit, even though it's a brand new processor. It will have problems with this. As you can see, it's now starting to tilt over just a little bit, and it's going to follow this ascent curve up. So now we should, well, we'll be losing these first boosters very, very shortly. They will not last for much longer, and once we lose those, the rest is pretty similar to the previous craft, so I will skip ahead once these detach. Hopefully we'll get something nice when they detach, a nice formation rather than all hitting each other and exploding, but let's see how that goes. In a couple of virtual seconds, it slows right down because these get to smaller and smaller amounts of thrust before finally shutting off around about now. Look at that. Korolev cross? Nope. How about Octo? Octo? Yeah, Octo deploy. Something like that. We'll figure out a name for that later, but that's pretty good. And now the rocket is continuing to head up. You'll see it's slightly behind prograde. That's not too much of a problem. I'm just going to keep an eye on this and make sure the next stage deployment is good. Coming up to main engine cutout in 10 seconds, and then we'll also lose our main fairings up here. We're passing the sort of top of the atmosphere as far as hitting our precious antennas is concerned. So there we go, and go. And now our second stage, our orbital insertion stage. And what we wanted this to do is to do nearly all of the work and get into orbit. Maybe a little tiny bit on the AJ-10, which is in here, but not too much. We want most of it to be done by this. So let's get forward and see whether that works. And coming up to second stage cutoff now, you'll see periapsis is coming around, and that will do. We're at 0.6 seconds, and we can get rid of this stage. Alright, so that has literally done all the work. We are now in an orbit, which is good. Although it has got some pauses on screen, nothing I can do with that, but I'm afraid. And we have all the fuel left in the fuel tank, so we have 5,000 meters per second in orbit, which is great, because this can be used for a lot of other things, technically. It depends on the range of this as to whether we can use it much further out, but I've set it to active vessel. We could set it to Earth, etc. But we should have enough with these other 2 antennas to actually communicate with Earth at the distance we're going, so that shouldn't be much of a problem. Now we've got to set up the orbit change. So what are we going to do? This is our target orbit, and this is, I think it's geostationary. It's close enough to not matter anyway. And you'll see we've got a ascending node here, and we're 28 degrees away from it. Oh my. Both sides. So that's not something we want. We want to be at 0 degrees. However, that doesn't matter for this first flight. What we can do instead is just line up the 2 orbits. So ours is going this way, and we want to get roughly around the ascending node. Doesn't matter if we're exact. Let's add a maneuver there, and let's just head out there. Let's just prograde burn. No real care in the world. Let's just get close enough to it. So if we just push that out a little bit more, it should be 2400-ish, 2427, yeah. And then we can just move this a little touch just to get in the right place. And then I'll swing around and let's see how far off we are. Okay, so if we get MechJeb's maneuver node editor, there you are. We can shift this in time as well, so you can see I can move it around. Let's just increase that to, I don't know, 4 seconds or something. There we go. And how far away are we from the ascending node there? Yeah, we're we're a little bit out. We can always change that later once we're out there. It's not much of a deal for the moment. So let's just add a little bit more prograde and make sure I'm not too far. I think that'll do. It's close enough anyway. So what have we got to do? We've got 2437 to burn, and we've got 4464 in our tank, so that is good enough. We should have RCS available once. I think we have RCS available now, do we? If I just press H. Yeah, we do have RCS. Okay, so we can align to the node whenever we want to. It's going to be a minute-long burn, of 30 seconds as far as we're concerned. So we're going to have to jump forwards to when we're closer to that in orbit. And then we'll align ourselves, accelerate with our RCS, that'll settle the tanks. Then we can actually ignite the engines, because this is the first time this has been ignited, essentially. We haven't done that before. We always had to use it to get into orbit. Okay, so let's move a little bit closer to the maneuver node. And yeah, I thought the amount was off. A minute seems far too small. So instead, when 2 minutes 30 plus another 25 seconds, so 2 minutes 45, and that's much more realistic. So I just enabled the engine, did a tiny burn, just to see how far off we were. So yeah, that will be coming up shortly. We are over Africa, I think. Let's zoom. Well, we can't really zoom out in this view. We should be over Africa. Yep, that's Africa, and all right. And we're on the node. We have enough nitrous left, 2/3 of the tank, just to align with this node. So let's appropriately prepare. We've got 10 seconds left, so we can just use some nitrous, settle the tank, and ignite. Let go. There we go. And off that will now go. So I will see you once that burn's complete. Okay, that burn's complete, so I'm going to turn it on my RCS, and I'm going to just reorient us a little bit, if I can get the right direction. Oops, I should make sure that's set off. Yeah, I just want to make sure that solar panel is in the sun without using all of our RCS, so I'm just going to rotate us around a little bit. Obviously, as we're coming around, we're also tilting towards the sun, so that's pretty nice. Let's just put that out of the way. Yeah, that seems enough. Let's kill the rotation there. And please don't use all my iron nitrous. There we go. We've got about half a tank left. All right, and we can turn off the RCS again. And now we need to, I've also extended the antennas. Do remember to do that before you leave Earth behind. That would not be good. And now you can see our path here. So we can plan another maneuver. All right, so let's plan that to the ascending node. Add a maneuver. And we can snap to the apoapsis. Let's just do that. Snap node to apoapsis. We'll need to realign for that node, but we'll do that when we're close. And now we get to choose this. Now, I've had some requests about explaining these even more than I previously have, the maneuver nodes. We're going to be burning in two different directions here. Well, we're going to be transitioning in two different directions. We're going to choose prograde, and that'll extend the periapsis that away towards the descending node. But we're also going to burn in a radial direction, either anti-radial or radial. This is the ascending node, so it'll be anti. So if we do this, you'll see our orbit tilts down, which is where we want it, like that. See, flat with the purple. And then prograde out. Now you'll see on the maneuver node editor, we've got, and this allows you to do things quite precisely, but it's important that you watch that these figures aren't exactly right. So let's just show you what I mean by that. Let's go further out until we're more towards that orbit. Okay. It's pretty close. Looks pretty close. Let's just bring ourselves out a little bit more. And then we want to align this a little bit more. So more anti. There we go. You'll see that's going to be too big now over the orbit. That's just the way it works. Let's just bring that in. There we go. And that kind of thing should be more than close enough. Let's just actually move ourselves the other way again. We're just slightly off tilted that direction. And again, that should be more than enough to get us the contract. You'll see, however, I've got a couple of different directions. These are orthogonal to each other, i.e. they're 90 degrees from each other. So in one direction, we're burning 1093, and in another direction, we're burning ignore the minus, 1437. You can't just add them together. Now, you can see here, we're only actually going to need 1800 because we're not adding them together as 2400 here when you're doing this with the exact maneuver node editor, because they're orthogonal. What we're actually going to fly is, you know, between them, the hypotenuse of the triangle, if you think about it like that. So you can work it out manually, but the default one in the game does show you. If you're plotting many maneuvers one after another, and you're only looking at this one, bear in mind if you're editing another one to either change to the in-game one so it shows you what that maneuver node is, or remember this is going to be too much, and to look at that. So we've got enough delta V. We've got 2600, and it's only asking us for 1800 of that, which is just enough to use the AJ10 for the last burn there, and then we should have the entire fuel tank. Not as much of it, but 600 is more than enough to do some maneuvering if we need to get it to, you know, exact geostationary or something along those lines. We certainly can't do what we did in the vanilla series and launch 3 of these at the same time. So what do we do now? Well, what we do is we go out to about here. Let's warp out there. You'll see our electric charge is draining quite quickly. That's just because I think we got the avionics for the AJ10, but that will be gotten rid of soon enough. So in we come, and you'll see now that we're out here, you'll get a lot closer idea of where we want this to happen. We want this to happen as close as possible to that ascending node right there. So you can change this if you like and just move it up and down a little bit. That will let you adjust things a little bit more. You'll see it throws things off a touch, but we can just use our maneuver node editor to just readjust things even more precisely here. So we want to get rid of that. It's going to be what? Zoom out. Yeah, so we could burn a little bit radial to shift our orbit from left to right if we wanted to. So let's say that way we could. There we go. And then once we've done that, we want to shift a tiny bit inclination. We want to go anti-clockwise over here, so we can go, oops, not that direction, wrong direction, that direction. That'll flatten things out. Yep. And then finally, just a final adjust on the prograde, which looks perfectly fine to me. The apoapses aren't right next to each other, but it should be more than close enough for this kind of work. This burn, it says, is 1 minute 48 seconds, so 30 and 24, 54 seconds, and we're at an hour away. So I think we're going to bring ourselves to be much closer. Warp out. Okay, so 8 minutes away. What I'm going to do now is I'm just going to, and we got good communications when we got 0.12 of a second delay from the planet. This is something we've not encountered yet. We will have to get into signal delay because this is realism overhaul, and yeah, the further you are away, the longer it takes to respond to your control inputs. So you have to program things using the flight computer, but we're going to get to that another time. So let's point ourselves at the node, turn on the RCS, and it'll start adjusting us. Quite a nice view of Earth there, though. Just see the faint outline. Hopefully you'll see this on YouTube. You can see the faint outline of the sun and the atmosphere on the outside. And of course, we're going to tilt ourselves forward towards the maneuver node. And then we'll bring ourselves in finally just to get ourselves as close as possible to, you know, a minute away from the maneuver node. That should be just fine, and then try and reignite this engine. So I'm going to accelerate us there, and we'll jump for that. And here we go, 6 seconds to go. Let's settle our tanks with the RCS. We've got a little bit left, so this should be just enough to settle the tanks and then ignite. And let go. And ignite, please. We're out of nitrous. Okay, if this happens, don't worry too much. Separate the RCS from the upper stage. Move that down below the separator, so we're not going to detach. Trigger that next stage. And then I want to... there we go. It's decided to do it itself. Okay, so that works just fine. We can use the RCS from the upper stage. The RCS from the upper stage is actually its main fuel. It's the hydrazine. So, you know, if you try and do that, you will be using up fuel. We should have more to spare. However, we've got around, what is it in the tank? 2200, and we only need 1400, so we should be more than comfortable. And then we come to the end of the burn, a couple of 100 meters per second. Down to 100, 50, and stop. Yeah, that's close enough, I hope. I don't have to start the engine up again. We've got 6.2 seconds of fuel left in this stage. Fine. And our orbit is pretty close. In fact, is that close enough for it to consider... Yeah, it looks like it's considered we've reached the specified orbit. So we're going to get rid of this stage. And now we have this final rocket engine. And it's going to be a... should we just activate it and just go and move a little bit further away? Yeah, why don't we activate it? There we go. Just thrust a little bit away from it. Then we can increase this. Increase the speed, and... Is that stable orbit? It is. First geostationary satellite done. And we're up here now. So we have control of this thing. It has battery power, and it should be able to recharge. Let's take a look. Are we facing the sun? Well, not really. So we should probably just tilt ourselves around a little bit. There we go. And then what we can do is just spin the craft to keep things pointing in the same direction over time. Or indeed, in our case, just get ourselves roughly on track and kill the rotation with RCS. So, job done. We've got the mission done, and we are pretty much ready to go with our first geostationary satellite. Unfortunately, it cost an absolute fortune. How much money do we have now? 484. But if this thing costs 150k a time, we're going to need a lot more money than that. So we should be fine as we are, I think. Yeah, that should be fine for now. And we can always adjust it later if we need to do that kind of thing. So back we go to the Space Center, and let's see what else we can unlock. Okay, so we're about to unlock improved avionics. It's about 12 days away, something like that. So we will be getting then the early cube satellite bus, which may well help. It may, I think that's actually maybe lighter than what's in this one. We were using the nope, wasn't any view. No, was it back in here? It's entirely possible. We're using the early controllable core. There it is. So 0.05 tons. The one we're going to get next is probably heavier than that then. Yes, 0.5 tons. Okay, so what does that actually give me? It counts as a service module, so maybe it'll let us carry stuff in it that we don't have need a separate tank for, something along those lines. That would be useful if we did. It can scan terrain. It has a modular fuel tank. Yeah, so we can actually fit fuel inside this thing. That's quite a good thing. We'll see what that compares to when we have a separate fuel tank. And then we have the Ranger Block 3 core. So again, pretty good. That's 0.1 tons. So I think that's meant for more interplanetary stuff. Booster control upgrades for the avionics. That's good. Alouette core, fine. Don't mind too much about these other things. A flight pack for the Agena D. Again, don't mind too much about these, but these cores are very, very handy to build different craft with. So that's going to unlock next in about 12 days. And let's just finish up this episode by just checking what missions we're going to be given next. What have we got? Well, I can still do another one of those. That will get me quite a bit more funds. Remember, we've already done that one in a previous episode, 2 episodes ago, I think. We can do first communication satellite again, but that's a small one. I don't want to do that. Well, are we going to get given another geostationary? Yeah, these are all, they're not really too much in the way of rewards. Uncrewed lunar landing, that would be huge, but we can't do that just yet, I don't think, or at least... the main problem is going to be both the signal delay and controlling that coming in, especially uncrewed. It's, yeah, it's very, very hard, unlike default vanilla Kerbal. A Venus flyby and a Mars flyby, those I do like the idea of. And we've got to get closer than 20,000 kilometers, so we need to make sure that the antennas that we have are capable of communicating with that distance, and that we have the correct transfer window. Now, you can do it just with MechJeb, with its pork chop plotter, but I think I may well install transfer window planner, and if I don't already have it, Kerbal alarm clock. They're both very, very handy just to schedule that kind of thing, so we know when both Venus and Mars flybys are coming up, and we would get pretty much 500,000 for each of those things. Not that I think we can do them, both of them with one craft. Well, if it was big enough you could, but you would go down near Venus first and then come back up. But yeah, we're not going to worry about that. Just going past one of them would be good. More importantly, we also want a little bit of science from that as well. That would get us quite a lot of science that we could use to unlock other things. So maybe have a look at those. We'll see where we are in the transfer. In fact, we can take a quick look at that now. I never remember the Venus angle, but the Mars angle is not too hard. We sort of need to be behind Mars, I think, by maybe 20, 30 degrees. I do need to look these up. I have forgotten them. It's been a long time since I've played Realism Overhaul. Clearly too long. Let's take a look. So if we zoom out, are we even anywhere near the position? That'll be the thing. Well, that's a good point, actually, because we're going to be going out that way, and there's Venus, so we'd have to drop back this way. Mars, however, is behind us at the moment, so I don't think that's where it needs to be. If I remember right, it needs to be ahead of us. Yeah, I could be wrong, but I will check for next episode if we need to do that, and we'll get the transfer window planner plotted. I'm sure people in the comments will probably tell me exactly what the angles are, which is fine. There's no problem with doing that. I could also be mixing them up with Juna, which is vanilla. Okay, so I think that'll do for this episode. I've got lots of other stuff to do, pretty much designing maybe something interplanetary and putting other things together. We don't have enough to upgrade other things yet. Oh, yeah, actually. So we could spend that, but I think to get that, I'm going to do that other re-entry mission. And once I'm safely above 500k, I will then spend on that one. That's going to be way too expensive. That's going to be way too expensive. And so are all the others. But that will let us get communicate with things much, much further out. So that'll be a useful one to get at some point as well. Hopefully you enjoyed the episode. First geostationary satellite in Realism Overhaul. Big achievement and not an easy one to actually do. You do need quite a lot of Delta V, as you've seen, unless you go with another launch site at the equator. I will leave that up to you. However, you can save a fair amount, at least 800 or so, maybe 900, 1,000, something like that, just by going from near the equator. Once again, feel free to like, subscribe and share if you would prefer to, and otherwise I will see you next time. Thanks a lot for watching.